So the pandemic, it really changed things for students across the board, hasn't it?
Absolutely. The transition was incredibly disruptive. Students essentially had to reinvent how they approached education almost overnight, from virtual classes to complete shifts in their daily routines. And the mental health impact, that's still ongoing.
Back when I had to move my classes online, I thought, okay, this will be a bumpy ride for a couple of months, tops. But some students, they had real challenges. One told me they didn't even have internet at home. They'd sit outside a library just to get Wi Fi. Can you imagine trying to learn like that?
Oh, exactly. And that's what we call occupational deprivation. It's when someone is unable to engage in necessary or meaningful activities due to external barriers. For students without reliable internet or a quiet space to study, their ability to achieve academically was severely impacted.
I can't even imagine trying to keep up under those conditions. I mean, for students in multi generational households where maybe a parent's an essential worker or they've got younger siblings running around.
Right, exactly. Those situations created unique stressors. Students often found themselves caregiving for siblings or sick relatives and trying to balance coursework on top of that. For many, it wasn't just about academics, it was their whole living environment working against them.
And it seemed like marginalized students arguably got hit the hardest, didn't they?
They did, whether it was limited access to technology, living in areas with poor internet infrastructure, or even being in communities with less healthcare access, these layers of inequity amplified the challenges. Plus, many of these students were already feeling the pressure of systemic gaps in support even before the pandemic.
Yeah, even now I'm noticing some of the same issues years later, like students struggling with mental health or playing catch up academically. It feels like the fallout isn't even close to over.
Exactly, and that's a big part of what we're continuing to address. Even post lockdown, the mental health strain lingers. The lack of connection and disrupted routines didn't just disappear when campuses reopened.
Given everything we've just talked about, the big question is where are we now? Are students still figuring out this new normal?
They are, absolutely. The pandemic didn't just disrupt education temporarily, it has fundamentally shifted how students engage in both learning and social activities. Many are still feeling disconnected from their peers or unsure about how to navigate group settings again.
Yeah, the whole isolation thing seems like it left a mark. I've had students tell me they're anxious just walking into a classroom.
Exactly, and that's where occupational therapy can play a significant role. We focus on helping students rebuild those social participation skills, whether it's learning how to re engage in face to face settings or finding ways to create community in virtual spaces. Social participation isn't just about being with people, it's about feeling like you truly belong.
And mental health, I mean that's a big piece of it too, right?
For sure, online learning especially has brought up a lot of mental health challenges. Students might feel overwhelmed with digital platforms, or they struggle with structuring their day in a way that balances education with personal life. Occupational therapy provides strategies for this, helping with everything from time management to creating environments free from distractions.
Wait, when you talk about strategies, what does that look like on the ground? Do you have an example?
Definitely. Let me share a case. During the height of the pandemic, I worked with a college student living in a cramped apartment with their family. They had no dedicated learning space and were overwhelmed by deadlines. Together, we developed a plan to create a semi-structured schedule that accounted for their family responsibilities. We even set up a designated learning zone at the corner of their kitchen table. Over time, they began feeling more in control. It was a small shift, but it had a huge impact on their stress levels and academic performance.
That's so interesting. Sometimes it's not these huge changes, but those incremental ones, huh?
Exactly. It's about identifying what's realistic and making those adjustments. Whether it's something as simple as finding a set study space or teaching mindfulness techniques to manage anxiety, occupational therapists focus on what matters most for each individual.
And what about the social side? I imagine some students really struggled without those impromptu study groups or just the vibe of being on campus.
Oh, absolutely. OT can help here too. We might work with students to develop confidence in initiating online social interactions or help them identify in person opportunities that align with their comfort levels. It all ties back to that sense of belonging, a core component of mental well being and success in education.
Thinking about what you said earlier about finding those small, realistic changes, I've got students telling me they feel completely overwhelmed just trying to manage their day to day routines. It's like they don't know where to start.
That's not surprising. Research shows that about 60% of students reported difficulty accessing mental health care during the pandemic. And even now, those challenges persist for many, like finding available counselors or feeling stigma around seeking help.
And that was only made worse when everything went remote, right? I had this one student who was taking all their classes online, but they told me they'd never felt more disconnected. They didn't even know who was in their classes.
Exactly. Remote learning eliminated the informal social interactions that are so vital, things like chatting with peers before class or grabbing coffee after a study session. That loss of connection is huge, and for some, it's still impacting how they engage now. Occupational therapy can really help foster that reconnection by creating strategies to rebuild relationships and social networks.
So, when you're talking about fostering connections, are we talking big initiatives or more one on one outreach?
Both, honestly. On a larger scale, schools can set up community building events, even virtual ones, that are more interactive or focused on shared interests. On an individual level, though, an occupational therapist might work directly with a student to help them ease back into group settings. Maybe finding a club or organization that feels welcoming, or even practicing social skills in a way that feels less overwhelming.
That's really nailing it. I mean, some of these students, they might be unsure of how to even take the first step anymore.
Right. A lot of students are still in this survival mode. They were so focused on managing day to day stress during the pandemic that rebuilding social habits fell off the radar. What we can do now is help them reframe their thinking, show them that connection is not just doable, but key to their academic and personal well being.
And what about health overall, like managing both the mental and physical side of things?
That's equally important. Students need strategies to balance health responsibilities with their academic workload. For example, time management tools, setting boundaries between school and personal time, or even mindfulness practices can make a big difference. And of course, access to healthcare resources, whether on campus or in the community, remains critical.
All right, so if you had to sum this up, what's the big takeaway for schools, therapists, or even someone like me, just a regular instructor trying to support students?
It's about creating spaces, both virtual and physical, where students feel they belong and supporting them in rebuilding those connections they've lost. It's also about recognizing that mental health support doesn't look the same for everyone and being flexible in meeting those needs. It's like asking, what does this individual or this group need to thrive?
I love that. Meeting them where they are, and honestly, it's kind of inspiring to think about how much difference we can make by just, well, paying attention to those things.
Exactly. Every small effort counts. When students feel supported, they're better equipped to succeed, not just academically, but in life. And that's the goal, right?
It really is. So, on that note, thanks so much for talking with me today. I've learned a ton, and I hope our listeners did too.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation. And to everyone listening, keep supporting your students. It makes all the difference.
All right, we'll see you next time on Student Success in OT. Take care.